Welcome back to the shop, everybody. We got quite the project in store today. We'll be attempting to recreate another one of these. This is a dice that I made. Six-sided dice. Out of rhyolite, wonderstone. I'm going to walk you through some of the steps, and I'll show you some of the steps, and we'll take it from there. So I first thought it'd be cool to do a cube out of rock when I went to the Rice Museum 5 years ago. That's outside of Hillsboro, Oregon. An amazing museum, and they had a number of rocks cut into cubes. Fast forward, somebody made some dice that I saw on Facebook 6 or 7 months ago, and that kind of planted the seed. I didn't have the tools to make a nice dice. Now I do. Well, and here we are. Now this took me about 5 hours. Now, of course, the first one always takes the longest. And today, one thing that I've been doing is I tried to make another one out of petrified wood. And well, it has not gone well. As you can see, we got some cracking, we got some split out here up at the top, and it's just, the material is not solid enough, it's not pure enough. So, this is just going to be a mistake. I'll take these gloves off here. This right here, I did what I think to be a pretty dang good job. You can see on this machinist square. I mean, we are on it as far as it being accurate goes. And then I drilled the divots and painted them. So this started off like this big piece of rhyolite here, and it was cut like that. And then I cut it like this, and I did that in the slab saw. And now we are going to take it over to the high-tech 6-inch trim saw and hopefully cut a rectangle or square out of this. Then we'll take it to the flat lap and hopefully get this looking pretty square. We'll be taking measurements along the way to try to get it as accurate as possible. And then we'll be heading over to the drill press and we will be drilling our divots. So that's where we land on that. I can't really think of a good way to do this without a vise on your saw. You'll see what I'm talking about. So here you can kind of see the setup clamped in the vise. We're going to be making a bunch of different little cuts here to try to get our cube out of this big slab. We're going to aim for it to be as accurate as possible and as perfectly square as possible. And we can definitely be touching that up later on the flat lap, but we got to try to get it as close as possible now. So we're going to probably do a cut there, a cut there, a cut there, and constantly be using the bottom of the vise as the reference point. Since we have this big slab off of the oil saw, we know that those two cuts are parallel to each other. So I want to be indexing my cuts off of that. As far as the blade goes, I'm using the red one? I can't remember the name sometimes. The red one. This green one, I feel like for doing really fine work, sometimes it'll chatter just a little bit. So I'm going to be doing the thin one. It goes a little slower. It's a give and take, you know. So we'll power this thing up here. I just love that I can run this saw and well, we can talk. I can cut and we can talk, you know? Not that loud, right? I'm not going to have you sit there and watch me cut the whole thing though, so we'll see when it's done. Now we have this cut here. We can flip it and do another cut and then cut that, and this is what we are looking like right now. We're almost perfectly 1 inch thick. Got about a little less than 2 inches this way. So now I'm going to probably cut a slice off of that, which will be about 26 millimeters or so, and then we can chuck it up again like that and cut our little block off of it, and we'll be able to take it over to the flat lap. This is going so much more smooth than using the petrified wood, so and it'll be nice to have a matching set of dice. So the best way to do the layout of something like this is pretty simple. I mean, you can zero it. It doesn't really matter for what we're about to do. We'll come in. We can twist that little knob at the top, and you can actually just turn it off. Now we're locked in place, right? Just kind of back that out just a little bit. There we go. So now we can kind of see where we need to cut, and we're going to cut on the outside of the line. Generally, the best way to do it is we're going to be clamping it in the vise like that, so we won't be able to really line it up with the blade, but we will be able to do that on this back side. So I'm just going to pitch it a little bit. Now, this isn't the best way to do it. You know, there's other little tricks, but maybe you can see now. We have a little faint line, and I'll put the saw blade on the outside of that. So this is one of the aspects that I think I would have a really hard time doing with any other type of saw setup. So right now this is clamped in place, right? And I can move the jaws now and perfectly line up where I want my cut before turning that wing nut and locking it into place. I mean, I think there are some ways that you can maybe do this with like a tile saw or an oil saw, like the slab saw, but it's nice to be able to, like, I mean, I can just like scoot this ever tiniest bit and try to get it exactly perfect by matching that line with the blade here. And I can tighten it down and, you know, do a little test, see how it's going to cut. You know, push it over just a teeny bit. I think we're good there. That should get us pretty close to it. And there we go. We got our cube. Let's clean this up, take it over to the bench. So, let's see how we did here. We're good. You know. A little tight there. This way, though, we got to take off probably about 1 millimeter. Let's see. So we are, we want to be as close to 1 inch, I think, as possible on this. So we'll take it down there just a little bit, and the flat lap will make short work of this. So now at 180, I'm going to sand all the sides, and then we're going to do a little bit of radius work on all of the 90s, so that when we take it over to the drill press, there's less likely to have any kind of issues. Then The corners, I'm just gonna do this. And on the sharp points, we're just gonna come in and just lightly, ever so quickly touch it. So it's time to lay out the dots on the dice. This is the pattern that you lay out a dice if you were to explode it. We are going to be doing that layout now. I'm going to be going through and marking with my calipers a 1/4 inch in all the way around, and then we'll be touching that with a Sharpie. And once we get all of those dots laid out, we can, well, head over to the drill press. Obviously, some of these in the middle, like the 5 and the 1, and then, well, the middle dots for the 6, I'm just going to divide the difference. So, yeah, I'll show you what that looks like. There you go. Lay out our dots. Keep in mind, this is just a point of reference for when we head over to the drill press. We can fine-tune it over there a little bit. So here's what we're doing. My drill press right here, has a stop, which allows me to only go so deep. So we just want to peck this. If you look at the other example of the first one we did, not all of these holes have to be the exact same depth because we're going to paint the inside of the holes. Should probably touch that up a little bit. I'm good at a lot of things, but put a paintbrush in my hand and I start to shake. I don't know. Anyways, so we're going to start by figuring out what the deepest one is going to be, set our depth stop for that, and then any of the shallow ones we can come back through when we're done and touch up. One thing that you're going to want is you're going to want a wet paper towel, so in between holes you can cool your bit down. This bit will get hot. We are using a Bosch masonry bit, a little 1/8 guy. What else? Before the safety sallies, roll into the comments and talk about rock dust. When you see how little dust we're going to be making, it's not a problem. So, with that said, let's figure this out, and I'll show you one hole, and then I'll show it to you when it's done. So the way you're going to want to do this is line up your hole, look at it from both sides, make sure it's where you want it to be. Ideally, you'd have some type of clamping vise. We're just going to be holding it with our fingers. We're only pecking it. Doing a little peck drill. And then come in and we'll, turn it on and go nice and slow. There we go. That's what's going to be taking our paint. Then do some of that. Keep that thing nice and cool. So here we go. We have all of our divots drilled. I made a couple little mistakes. I am freehanding it, but I think it'll look really good side by side when it's polished up. So, polishing, we're going to go through 180, a little bit more. 180, 325, 600, 1200, 3000, cerium oxide, paint our dots, and we are done. We we are at the 1200. 3000. Cerium oxide. Off to paint. Here is our finished polished dice. Let's see how good we did. Got that machinist square. I'm happy with that. All that's left is paint the dots. So to do that, I'm just going to be using some acrylic paint. Now, it's not the thing that I'm the best at. You know, got the first pancake. That one goes to the dog. Second pancake's always better. Who knows where I'll end up in the future making these things. So, if you know a better way to do this, I am all ears, because I would love a better way to permanently mark out these dots where it's like a nice, perfect little thing. In other news, I feel like if there is anything to really be improved upon, it would be probably a drilling jig. So, you know, if you made a perfectly 1-inch square dice, and then have some metal drilling guides that would fit over it. I mean, I have a history of making things, so doing like a jig is going to have that repeatable, indexable aspect to it that looks really nice versus, well, you know, if you're using metal, right, you can use a center punch. I don't know where mine is. Here's a center punch, right? You can pound a center punch in. I didn't really want to do that, so in turn I kind of had, I had some walking of the bit, and that's just the way that is. Maybe in a future thing I'll test using a center punch on the stone, but I was afraid of cracking it. So, and same thing goes with a spring-loaded center punch. So there's one dot. Just got a bunch more to go. Well, it's the next day, and it is dry here. So, came out pretty well, I think. Lessons learned from this. Making cubes is hard. Don't get into the process of chasing your tail with it. And what I mean by that is if one side is longer, as you start to grind that down, you're shortening up all the other ones. So you'll start to chase your tail, and eventually your cube's just going to get smaller and smaller. Plan your cuts. Use the thinnest blade possible. Something super thin. Tile saw, I don't know if I could do it with a tile saw. Use really solid material. In the future, so here's the first one. There's my second one that I showed. For drilling the dots out, I would use something, not this, but this is an example of a drilling guide. So imagine you have a 1-inch square piece of steel lined up on top with it indexed on all the sides to hold that thing in place, and used this as a guide for a 1/8 masonry drill bit to be able to drill the dots perfectly lined up, because as you can see here, it's tough to get it perfect. So that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something and you enjoyed watching me make this dice. I'm sure I misspoke a couple of times. As always, everything I say and do here on this channel is 100% fact, 50% of the time. And I'll catch you on the next video. Definitely hit the subscribe button if you like, things with rocks and stuff.